What's up, good people? Christian Allaire coming to you from my little study here in Huntington Beach, and a little tutorial for you today. Really appreciate you checking in. So today's topic is going to be why yoga breathing and why the emphasis on breathing. So most modern practitioners think your normal yoga studio go into a blazing room and they start to move their body, and it's for the sole purpose of strengthening and toning the musculature, the body's ability to develop power and create endurance. What is absent from this picture for many is the lack of breathing, or even the understanding of breathing and how this would be such an important topic, and why you would actually focus on the breath more so than the toning and strength of the body. So Western scholars pretty much to this very day have agreed upon the ancient tenet that a human is a trinity of three: body, mind, and spirit. This formula of body, mind, and spirit basically is what yoga is saying when it says it's integration. It is yoking together of all the elements in order to bring it into a harmonized whole. So the best formula that I know of to bring this trinity together, to integrate it, is the 8 limbs of yoga by Patanjali. So the 8 limbs, if you're not familiar, is yamas, is the yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, and samadhi. So these 8 limbs are the way to harmonize and bring the entire trinity into a beautiful balance. But our business today is pranayama, which is the science of breathing. So defining pranayama, what exactly is pranayama? So I am going to parachute in a doozy of a book. It is BKS Iyengar, Mr. Iyengar's book, Light on Pranayama. Light on Pranayama. In my classes, I will say quite consistently, we're here to move the body in order to get energy moving or get energy unstuck. And so at first, for some of us, and I only can speak from the male perspective, when you say get energy unstuck, it sounds, frankly, it sounds a little bit weird. So from Mr. Iyengar's book, I think I'll just read a little passage out of his book in order to try to set the stage a little bit for what I have to say. So the term pranayama, prana means breath, respiration, life, vitality, energy, or strength. When used in the plural, it denotes certain vital breaths or currents of energy. Current of energy is called a pranavayu. In Sanskrit, you have pranayama, and then you take pranayama and you slice it apart, and you have pra and then anayana. So listen to the definition of the second part of pranayama. Anayana means stretch, extension, expansion, length, breath, regulation, prolongation, restraint, or control. That's a doozy. That one AYAMA means all of these terms. Pretty significant. The Shiva Samhita, which is an ancient text that we won't even get into, calls it Vayu Sadhana, which is breath and practice and quest. So it's the quest for the breath. Patanjali, in his Yoga Sutras, describes pranayama as the controlled intake and outflow of breath in a firmly established posture. Beautiful stuff. So we covered the second part of pranayama, ayama, meaning stretch, extension, etc., etc. So what about the term prana? And we use the term to mean life force, but here's what Mr. Iyengar has to say about prana. It is as difficult to explain as it is to explain God. Prana is energy permeating the universe at all levels. It is physical, mental, intellectual, sexual, spiritual, cosmic energy. All vibrating energies are prana. All physical energies such as heat, light, gravity, magnetism, electricity are also prana. It is the hidden or potential energy in all beings, released to its fullest extent in times of danger. It is the prime mover of all activity. It is energy which creates, protects, destroys, vigor, power, vitality, life, spirit, and all forms of prana. So when you take prana, and you marry it with ayama, pranayama, it becomes a very, very powerful force, for sure. So how is this pranayama, how is this germane, or how is this relevant? Well, I'm going to bring it to something a little more Western, a little more current in our thinking. And I'm going to talk about what is called the 3 diaphragm model. Diaphragms meaning the diaphragms that's in the chest and the lower abdomen and the upper glottal. This model was developed, or at least I learned about it from Dr. Mathew J. Taylor, who was on the board of directors for the Veterans Yoga Project. He's a yogi, he's a yoga therapist. He was also a physical therapist, was in the Army, very, very smart man. And if you would really like to learn a detailed description about how this model is also related to pain and the controlling of pain, I'm going to link his video in the description below, called the 3 diaphragm model. So what is the 3 diaphragm model? Well, it's the story about how the mind, body, and spirit are connected, right? Because it all happens in the center of the chest cavity. Here's an interesting thing to think about. Most yoga students believe that the path to strength and health and vitality is to get a pair of 6-pack ab stomach muscles. 6-pack abs implies health and wellness. Well, let me tell you, that is a myth. That is not necessarily true. You can have a 6-pack abs and be an unhealthy person. Pretty shocking. It is the relationship of the strength between the 3 diaphragms. So this strong relationship between the 3 diaphragms is what really brings you health and wellness. As I always like to say, the quality of your life is largely dependent upon the quality of your breathing. The quality of your breathing is going to be dependent upon the quality of your diaphragm. So what are the 3 diaphragms? Okay, you have in the pelvic floor, down low in the pelvic floor is your pelvic diaphragm. And without that pelvic diaphragm, your organs would basically just fall out the bottom. It is what accepts the downward pressure. So think Mula Bandha, your bandha, one of the locks. You know, when you pull in through the Mula Bandha, you're strengthening the pelvic floor. Then you have your middle respiratory diaphragm, what I call the Big Kahuna, in the center of the chest. It's shaped like an umbrella, and it's very strong, creates lots of stability in the center of the chest. Then you have the upper glottal. In the upper glottal is the thoracic outlet. So thoracic outlet, think about somebody who runs up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs they're very tired, and they put their hands on their knees, they bend their knees, and they kind of lean forward, and they start to breathe hard. That is the thoracic outlet. That is the diaphragm at the upper end letting out pressure. So the 3 diaphragms, and in the 3 diaphragm model, they work in tandem as a piston. These 3 diaphragms, when you actuate them, as you breathe in deeply, the middle diaphragm, what I call the Big Kahuna, actually presses down. And as it presses down, this is what creates the belly to press out. The pressure of the diaphragm going down pushes into the pelvic floor. So you have to have a strong foundation. Your pelvic floor, because the respiratory diaphragm is pressing downward, which is pushing the belly out. As it pushes the belly out, it's getting out of the way of the rib cage, so the rib cage then can expand. If the rib cage can't expand, then the lungs cannot expand, and then in turn you cannot get the oxygen the body needs. So if you have downward pressure, you're also going to have upward pressure, and so this thoracic outlet, the upper glottal portion, is the 3rd diaphragm, and they're working in tandem as pistons. Before I move on as to why the 3 diaphragms, understanding how they work as a piston, I'm just going to give you this little factoid. It's important that we understand or remember that we breathe roughly 12 to 15, the average person 12 to 15 times per minute. This in turn means that we breathe roughly 900 times per hour or 17,000 times per day. I mean, that is a hell of a workload, and there are few other functions in the body that are working as hard. I mean, probably the eyelashes are blinking more or so, and of course the heart rate, etc., etc. But you get the point. So why is this crucial? You know, telling you all about the diaphragms and understanding the 3 diaphragm models. Why does this make a difference? Well, I'll tell you why it makes a difference, because your ability to breathe, this quality of life that I say with your breathing and the controlling of your 3 diaphragms, that deep rhythmic diaphragmatic breath, what does it do? It controls your autonomic nervous system. So before we even discuss the autonomic nervous system, I'm just going to, you know, kind of sketch it out a little bit. So the nervous system, you have your nervous system, and then from the nervous system, you have your central nervous system. So nervous system, over here you have central nervous system. And then in your central nervous system, what is your central? Well, that's your spinal column. That is your brain. And then on the other side, you have your peripheral nervous system. And it also branches off into the autonomic nervous system. And then you have the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system carries sensory input, signaling, carries the signals back and forth. So leave the somatic nervous system aside, okay? And then let's focus on the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system controls your internal organs. It controls the functioning of your internal organs in order to bring you to homeostasis or keep you in a homeostatic, balanced state. With the autonomic nervous system, it has 2 components, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Rest or digest, or fight or flight. The gas pedal is the fight or flight. The braking system is the rest or digest. Your sympathetic nervous system releases the stores of energy. It accelerates your body's processes. So for people that are having a panic attack or suffer from anxiety, or they lose focus, they breathe from the chest up, short, rapid breath, which creates the conditions where the adrenals start to fire, adrenaline is poured into the system, your eyesight starts to narrow, the pupils start to dilate, you lose your executive function a little bit because blood is shunted away from your ability to rationally think, and it moves into the muscle groups, you know, so you can, you know, duke it out. Your parasympathetic system is its balanced point. It's the opposite end of that. It regulates digestion. So people with lots of stress in their life, they tend to eat bad food because it's a way of managing stress. And also your digestive system is all bollocksed up because you're out of balance. So when you're in a good parasympathetic state, meaning you're not too low, you are actually replenishing your energy and you're regulating your digestion. It allows for restoration, is what I'm trying to say. So think hyper-arousal, hyper, and then think hypo-arousal. You know, spazzing out and totally down in the dumps. Too much physiological energy, hyper. Too little physiological energy is you're down low. And what we're trying to do, and this comes straight out from the Veterans Yoga Project, is we're trying to keep ourselves in what we call the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is this zone right here. We want to stay within this little space. Hyper, hypo, too much activity. You don't want to be going from here to there, up and down, up and down. You want to just keep toggling back and forth through here. Right through that beautiful window of tolerance. So the question is, how do you stay within the window of tolerance? Well, you control your autonomic nervous system. How do you control your autonomic nervous system? You learn to breathe with pranayama skills. So wrapping up the discussion around why yoga breathing, why pranayama style breathing. Well, I could just go back and discuss everything we just did a second ago, But the takeaway for practitioners is when you're in the studio and you're working in a difficult pose or even an easy pose, and the teacher says, come back to your breath, come back to your breath. What I would recommend you do is when you come back to your breath, you focus on the breath, but you start to learn to take those deep inhales and exhales. You will find in pranayama that there are many techniques. So some techniques are in a dedicated position. You might be sitting in a seated position, not practicing asana. You're practicing pranayama, where you breathe in and you hold it at the top, and then you tuck your chin into a jalandhara bandha, or a throat lock, and you retain the breath, and then you let it out. So that would be one of the ways of doing the practice. So today's video is not about practicing pranayama. It's trying to simply emphasize the importance of the breath, introducing what pranayama is, understanding why it's important, because of the 3 diaphragms control the autonomic nervous system, and the quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of your breath and how you control the 3 diaphragms, whether you're strengthening the 3 diaphragms. So newer practitioners, just become aware of your breathing in the pose. Don't worry about bandhas and locks and all this stuff. Just practice and train yourself to be aware when you've lost the focus on the breath. For people who have been practicing for quite a while, I think what I would recommend is to grab Iyengar's book, Light on Pranayama. And you could start a dedicated practice. So a dedicated practice, what that would look like is that you do your regular practice, your asana practice, and then after shavasana, maybe you sit in a seated pose and you do some pranayama style breathing as outlined in the book. There are many practices. You'll find one that resonates with you, and then now you have another tool in your yoga kit. And that is it. And that's all I wanted to say. And I hope you enjoyed this video. A little more on the intellectual side versus the ones that I've been doing. Remember, there are plenty of practices for you to get after it, get physically sweaty with me. If you like this video and you found value in it, give it a like. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, give it a mash down. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.